Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Living Large Las Vegas. My name is Kobe Sherlock, and today, back in the lab, Mr. Derek Parent. Derek, say hello to everybody.
Hello, hello.
Guys, we have a super special guest we're bringing to you today. I'm really excited about it. Great connection coming out of the Las Vegas Metro Chamber, or the Vegas Chamber, I should say, which is their new branding. Today, I want to introduce all of you guys, all the listeners, to Chief Master Sergeant Kevin James from the Air Force. Kevin, say hello to everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Man, I appreciate you, and I know we had a chance to talk out here, and I'm excited for them to really get to know you and hear a little bit about your story and how you got here. So if you don't mind, will you share a little bit about maybe your background for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely will. So let me throw this out here first, that anything I say or do is not endorsed by the Air Force.
Oh, deal.
It's solely Kevin James. But absolutely, been in the Air Force 28 years. Today actually was my final out, which means administratively I am not in the Air Force, but I'm still in the Air Force because I'm on leave. But I've been in Vegas almost 3 years, and I'm enjoying it.
Man, I love it. And, you know, for us, Derek, you've been in Vegas a long time. How long have you been here?
20 years. April was 20 years for me.
And I've been here just over 3. And Vegas has been special for us, man. For you being into the, now, experiencing this Vegas community, how's Vegas been treating you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been around the world, and I got to Vegas and fell in love with it. There's so much depth to Las Vegas. I think, I always tell my people, like, you close your eyes and I say, think Las Vegas. All that, that you just think of the Strip. I'm like, man, there's so much depth and history here that, I'm in love with it. I love Vegas. The Vegas has been good to the James family.
I got to ask, Chief, what made you want to join the Air Force?
Man, that's a good question. Probably being a C and D student, and my dad was in the Air Force, and quite honestly, he said, you are not college material. He was like, so you need to do something. And he took me to the recruiter, and 6 months later, I was in the Air Force.
Man, what was it that, really just said, this is my moment, I'm going to stick it through, the Air Force is for me, I'm committing?
I'm going to tell you what, the Air Force has been great to me. It has been great. That's like saying, what's the best ingredient, on a pizza. And it's like each individual aspect has been good to me, whether it's education, family, putting food on the table, meeting people, traveling. I kind of knew when I realized that I had the ability to help and be something to somebody, right? So, I was that kid who grew up with the towel wrapped around my neck, running around wanting to be Batman or a hero. And you realize, there's heroes every day out there who influence, and what better place to make impact than being in the military and serving.
How many years now have you been in the Air Force?
28 years now.
28 years. I thought you were only 35. Jeez.
Man, I tell you, that's most of my life,
yeah.
Chief. You've been in the Air Force most of my life, brother.
Yeah, and honestly, it goes by in a blink of an eye. So that kind of goes back to your last question. Like, I think when you're constantly trying to achieve and do, the days go by super fast.
Being a Master Chief, what's it like being a leader? Because you are in command. You have a lot to move.
Right.
How do you move and inspire that many people?
So for me, it is tough. Because I think any leader will tell you that any decision you make to go left will, there's some folks who want to go right, and sometimes they don't understand that going left is the best decision for everybody. But I think being authentic and real, so the type of chief I became was based on when I was coming up, I felt like when I needed something or the advice I was given wasn't not necessarily it wasn't always so transparent. And so I was like, I wasn't misled, but at the time, sometimes you feel like there's those barriers. And I said, if I ever become, a leader who can make a difference, I'm going to do my best to connect. But that was years ago, and as generations come in and times change and priorities change, you're constantly evolving as a leader, which means you're shifting from leader to follow. And you'll find as a chief, you do more following and listening. than you do telling and doing.
So you came in, so you just came in just regular enlisted, and then, what was that journey like to get to a chief? Because it's not easy. No, I mean, you don't really, military, that is one of the highest ranked
And I feel like you said there was 1 in 100, right?
So only the top 1% make Chief Master Sergeant. So to go back to your question, a younger version of me was very opinionated and questioned everything, but it's your attitude is what makes it tough, to be honest with you. Like if any leader out there, anybody I mentor, I'll tell them, like, your attitude dictates your outcome. You know what I mean? And so it's based on lenses, right? So, I mean, you can look at something and just choose to have a negative outlook on it, and that's probably what it's going to be regardless. It was easy, but it was tough. And I know that that's really a very ambiguous answer, right? So what I'm saying is I just worked hard. I put myself in positions to where I probably could have gotten in trouble, but I had very patient leaders who were like, they saw something in me. And I think that's what it boils down to is, when you see something in someone, your job as a leader is to pull that potential out of someone. And I was just fortunate that someone did on those times that I needed it. And other times I just worked hard. I never really thought I deserved anything. I just worked, did what I was supposed to do, and the promotions came.
So what are your plans? So obviously coming out, what are your plans after?
I'm going to find a career. I've accepted a position with under the Department of Energy. I'm still waiting for a start date, but I just still want to serve and help people. Especially in the community. That's part of the blessing of bringing Air Force leadership perspective, and then being immersed into like Leadership Las Vegas, where you have such a diverse spread of leaders of different backgrounds. Yeah. And so I just want to be able to continue to serve and have purpose. I think especially right now, we're in a time where we need leaders to step up and bring people together. And like, we were talking before, it's like, I think the biggest problem is we have to be open-minded. That's one of the leadership traits we learned, be open-minded to other perspectives and be willing to understand that it may not align exactly with yours, but there's a way to make it happen.
I would agree.
Yeah, too often we see folks just shutting down other people's opinions without the consideration of, or maybe even an empathetic approach of what they're going through or what their experience has been.
Right.
In my own personal experience, it's one where, let's get it out there. Let's put it on the table. And if it's constructive and solution-based like we talked about, I bet it's something we can work around and work together to get moving. But I think it drives, you nailed it with servant leadership. And I really believe that when you get out and you're serving with people, many different types of people, that's when, the colors come and you can really see what it takes to hear other people's perspectives. And sometimes you understand when you need to go left and not right, and
right.
make that decision.
Well, I think, one, never give up, right? Because, you can watch a sports game and the team can be down, but that's not how the game ended. They won, and that's even with people. Like, don't give up, and believe and have faith. And then it comes through, and trust those that came before you, that they're taking you the direction that you need to. Servant leadership is definitely the way to go, because you're usually leading by example.
Well, that's one of the greatest things I love about the city for all these years. It seems to always unite and leaders emerge. We've had lots of tragedies and, downfalls, and we've had some great times, but, the leaders that we have, they step up, and, there's a ton of leaders in Metro that are unbelievable. And to have you a part of the 2020 class, like I said, I did, Henderson, and I've, obviously applied, and I asked Mary Beth, about I want to be in, 2021. I love surrounding myself around people, because once you surround yourself around like-minded people, things happen, right? Yep. You want to make changes and do, great things. And, I see all the stuff that you're doing. So it's an honor just to have you here, sharing, your journey, because your journey is, honestly, we should all be, first of all, thanking you for serving. And you did a couple of tours in Afghanistan. And
yeah, I have, like, if you accumulate all the years, years, so you know where I'm going with this, right? Yeah. Between remote assignments and deployments, I have just short of 8 years of being over there. So 2 Afghanistans, Iraq, and several other locations.
Seen a lot of action.
Yeah, but believe it or not, you have a good time. You know, you're closer. It's a different environment, right? So like, you know, I used to harp on you know, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
I haven't.
Right. So Maslow talks about, you know, there's a hierarchy of needs where, you know, you need physiological needs first. You know, you got to be able to survive, food, water. Then you need like security, right? Then you need a sense of belonging, right? If you have all three of those, then you actually have esteem. And if you have esteem, then you actually can self-actualize and believe in yourself, who you become, right? So with Maslow, when you go down range, sense of belonging becomes huge. You kind of lose perspective of like, you're not necessarily focused on the rank, you're focused on the community of being together, you know, and you'll find that, you know, you're down range, you know, it's like, hey, gee, what are you doing? Let's go. It's time to go eat lunch from the lowest level airman. And you need that, you know, like we need each other, you know, on a human level. And if you don't have the ability to connect, you know, then you kind of stop right there. And you never make the progress to self-actualizing and achieving what you truly have the talent to, because you don't have that esteem to believe in yourself.
Yeah, man. I mean, you set yourself up in a community. You get the accountability, the support, the drive, the vision, the efforts, and it all. And like Derek said, I mean, people just come together. They're attracted to that. People want to be with each other, and I think Vegas does it so well. There's so many incredible business leaders here, so many incredible, you know, political leaders in that case that really do a good job of bringing this town together. And with everything going around the country right now, I feel like Vegas has just showcased, you know, how to be in this time. And, you know, we've had our downs for sure, but
absolutely,
I'm looking forward to the ups that come with this for sure.
Yeah.
You know, this has been one of the greatest things that we've ever done, was bringing this podcast together, because, you know, having people just like you in this chair, we've had amazing leaders that, you know, from Hope for the City, what they've done for feeding people, and, you know, just everyone who's wanted to come in and share their story, you know, and it's all the same. What everyone is everyone who's been in the same vision, all servant leaders. They all in the community leading, and it's true testament of what leadership is, you know. So why did you opt to stay in Las Vegas after you're out? Like what was it that really made you want to stay here?
I felt alive here. You know, I mean, financially, it's more beneficial than going back home to California. I think that's you know, when I read on Facebook, like, oh, those California people are coming over to take over Vegas. But no, I mean, financially is more stable, and I had a home. So when I moved here, me and my family are very close. My parents moved with me, and so they're older, and there's just a good support system here. Like, you know, obviously the VA, you know, that's one huge one. The hospital is literally 2 streets away from me. But like I was saying earlier, like, I can literally just be at the gym, living a normal life and eating McDonald's. And that night, if I like, hey, you know, to my wife, get dressed up. Let's go to the Strip and just feel alive. You know, I mean, this is where people come. Yeah. Like, when you think of Las Vegas, I used to come here and just be like, oh, look at all those lights and stuff. And then today I'm driving here and I'm like, I live here now. Yeah. I never thought I would. And I just love Las Vegas. I mean, there's something about it that just made me want to stay. It felt right.
Yeah.
It felt right. And now, look, I mean, you know, being part of this program, there's so many things that I can contribute to, you know, and I think everybody in life, if they know they have a purpose, and serving has always been mine, I can continue to do that.
I'm sure that you toured the new Raider facility. Have you toured that yet?
I did.
So, I mean, even driving by it, like, what do you think? I mean, I have to ask that. You know, you're a California guy. You know, Raiders coming in from California, the Las Vegas Raiders now. So, I mean, that stadium is unbelievable.
It was. Actually, my first question is, when are the A's coming? But
I think that was
soon,
a myth.
Probably soon.
I think what Major League Baseball is doing is what I've heard they're doing. Like they say, oh, well, Vegas will take us to the cities that want to. So, but
and we will. So Major League come to Vegas.
They were supposed to be where the Rio was.
So I'll be honest with you. When I see it, the first thing I think is Darth Vader.
I did too.
Right.
It looks like a spaceship,
like an evil Leia.
Yes.
Evil Leia.
It's a magnificent, honestly. It's a beautiful infrastructure that, I mean, literally sits off of 15. So, you know, I mean, usually you're just looking like eyes right when you're driving 15 and you see in the strip.
Yep.
But now it's like, oh, what's this? I mean, it literally looks like it's on
Yeah.
the highway, right? I think it's beautiful. Allegiant Stadium is great. I think the Raiders come in. I'll enjoy it. I never really went to the Raiders games. I think by virtue of being in Las Vegas and the Raiders being here, I'm kind of forced to like forget that I like the Chicago Bears.
Dude, I know. Are you serious? I'm a diehard
He's a
Bears.
huge Bears
I
fan.
have Walter Payton's rookie card in my top drawer.
Dude, yeah, I'm a Bears fan, and I just kind of gave up. You know, until they got them a decent quarterback, I was like, all right, I'm done.
They're still not good, gentlemen. They're
We
still
always
not
say
good.
we have a decent quarterback. Trubisky was supposed to be decent, right? Like, yeah.
I just want to point out the Bears are still not good, but
They
one
are
day.
not. They are not. And
That's funny. That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, so I will definitely probably go to maybe a Raiders game here and there.
Yeah.
Especially because, like I said, I'm close with my dad, and so I definitely want to take him to at least one.
But cool. We're like, you know, like I mean, we have our first legitimate huge franchise. You know, like, you know, it's pretty cool. I actually toured the practice facility. I don't know if you've toured that one yet, but the practice facility is amazing too. Just to see the 3 fields, the outdoor, the indoor, like how they've done everything, like how everything's laid out. It's amazing. You know.
Right. Well, make sure when I talk about being a Bears fan, you blur my face out when this goes live, because I don't want no.
You still got time. You know, they're not here yet, technically.
No, but we have
I'm a Titans fan, so I get it.
But we adopted Raiders. You know, they actually. You know, I used to say I don't really follow sports teams. You know, follow sports teams. They don't pay my bills, but literally we've worked with players and organizations, so now they do. So I'm definitely a Raider fan now. Yeah. But, you know, just your journey inside the Air Force. God, I mean, I keep going back and just playing it over and over inside my head. You know, 28 years of serving our country. You know, and I told you like my favorite trip was North Carolina and going to Fort Bragg. But man, I keep thinking Afghanistan and all that you've seen. You know, what's some of the stuff that you can share with some of our listeners to really speaking about the Wounded Warrior, because I'm sure you saw a lot of injuries and you're really big with Wounded Warrior.
Right. So, yeah, I became a Wounded Warrior because part of what I do in my career field at the time when I was in Iraq, I ran mortuary affairs, which is not, you know, it's a very honorable, you know, without me getting emotional, it is something that I am very proud of, but it's something that, you know, deep inside, like, man, you know, like, this is reality. And my heart really goes out to, you know, at the time, the families, you know, who, you know, they send their kids, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'll show you this, you know, like I've always been protective, whether, you know, even our kids, when we discipline them, right, they don't realize that we're trying to protect them, right? So that, you know, when it came to my airmen or my peers, anyone, right, you know, based on you see that stuff and, you know, following the rules and being prepared, you know, it becomes a hot button topic for you, right? And a lot of them, is it that serious? You know, like remember back when you didn't have to wear seatbelts and all of a sudden seatbelts became what's important, right? I wrote a paper a long time ago, and it talked about at the time statistically about 80% of military dependents, kids, join the military. So if you ever see someone who's in the military and be like, oh yeah, my mom or dad or my uncle, like there are generations of just they serve. And when I experienced that, and I have kids myself, you know, I'm like, man, well, who's developing the future leaders of the Air Force? And who will lead my kids if they join the military? And that became one of my charges, you know, like they're like, man, Chief, you stayed in so long and you could have got out. I was like, yeah, I love serving though, you know, and someone is expecting me to bring the best out of their son, their daughter, their sister, their brother. And I've seen what I believe is the worst. And so, you know, while that is a hard lesson, you know, that was one of my experiences that is like, wow, I got to do something so awesome. It's one of the things that, you know, you hate to go back and relive, you know, and I've done it several other times besides there. But I'll tell you on a more brighter note, you know, like I think in life, like how we're here,
Yeah.
it's the people that make it, right? I mean, it's the relationships. Where else can you be stuck in the middle of who knows where? You know what I mean? And you're showering in a tent, and the camaraderie and the friendships and the bonds. I mean, I still have a friend to this date that me and him went to basic training together. You know, 28 years later, he retired years ago. I think he just fishes daily. Right?
Not a bad retirement.
No, that's literally his Facebook name now. I fish daily. Yeah, like people. I mean, that's why we do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, podcast, you're trying to connect with people. You're trying to get a message across, you know, with leadership, you get to connect. And that's the story. That would be the theme. It's about the people, you know, all the way through.
You know, when Jane first told me you were coming on, and you guys connected about getting you in here, I saw the title, and the first thing that came to my mind was Journey. And as we're talking, I'm just like, I wonder what that title, who that person's going to be. And as you're sitting here and speaking, it's evident why you are and how you are the leader you are.
Well, I'll tell you, people, you know, like, you know, when you look at, like, you know, when listen, we have stripes, right? You know, and I used to tell my folks, you know, because, you know, you just see the stripes, right? But you don't see that I missed 10 of my son's 14 birthdays. You don't see the Christmases that, you know, these people are, these airmen, these people who serve. There's a lot that gets missed, you know what I mean? And that's something that those who've never done it before, they can appreciate it, but you don't necessarily know the story behind it, you know what I mean? And everybody has a story, right? Everybody's had their own journey. And for me, you know, it's like, if I go out and be like, do you know what I've missed, you know, that comes across. So like, it dilutes the authenticity of you serving, you know, but you know, there's a lot to it, you know, that is true. You know, I've missed a lot of my family's birthdays, you know, I've missed Christmases. And again, it goes back to what I said, the camaraderie downrange though, you know, so it's like, man, but I have great memories of Christmases downrange. You know what I mean? I mean, me and one guy I was telling you about when I ran Class 1 logistics for the Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, and the Navy SEALs. It was Christmas, and we're trying to fry turkeys, and there's rockets hitting. And I'm like, hey, we ain't letting these turkeys burn. I'm not dealing with Sergeant Major, be mad. You know? Where can you get those experiences? You can't.
Man, I don't know if I could fry a turkey so well with rockets hitting near me.
Just think it's 4th of July. It's just fireworks.
You know, I mean, well, and so, you know, I mean, those are the individual stories, you know, I mean, like, you know, you have the Metro PD, they got theirs, you know, and so it's been fun. So that's the weird part, right? 28 years, I think we learned in the military, we kind of take time for granted, because when you deploy, it can be for 6 months, it can be for a year. And, you know, it's like, we'll take an assignment for 1 year to be away from our family, you know, and I'll go home and tell, you know, my family, it's just a year. That's a long time for some people, you know what I mean? And 28 years didn't feel like a long time, but, you know, when I let my hair grow out and you see all the gray.
That's why I keep mine short too. I swear, this is my twin brother, my brother, just the bigger version, right? So how many years have you been married?
Lynn and I have been married for 3 years.
Awesome.
Right, and then as you know, we just had a number 6 baby.
Yep.
So obviously, if you do the math, people are gonna be like, how many kids did you have in 3 years? Right. So London is our first together.
And now 3 months, right?
And now almost 3 months.
Almost
old,
3 months.
Born in the middle of COVID. You know, and I'm gonna tell you that's an interesting dynamic in itself. You know, but gradually, you know, I don't know where it goes forward, but, you know, slowly but surely, you know, we got to start returning to some sense of normalcy.
Right.
You know, and even it was like the first time we were going to bring London to his aunts and uncles and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, did you wash your hands?
Yeah.
More than usual, spray the Lysol.
You know, and it's not a fun way to live. And I'm not saying, you know, it's, man, you're like, 2-week time before symptoms are shown, and it's like how do you balance that, you know? And so that's, you know, what I've told the Falcons, you know, in my leadership. I'm like, we got work to do. You know, we're leaders in the community, and there's several years of alumni, right? But at some point in time, you know, like, what are we gonna do? You know, and some there, it's an amazing group. I can't tell you, life changing with these leaders.
You know, I don't think too many people know a lot about Nellis. Will you hit on Nellis and how incredible of a base that is here in Vegas?
The size too, Creech.
Yeah, it is a very big base, a very large, diverse wings. You know, it's not like a one wing concept. There's several wings there. You know, like I was telling you, it's basically the Air Force's Top Gun. It's its own city. You know what I mean? Lots of people there. You always see, you know, I always tell people, you know, especially when we were talking about Las Vegas, right? In leadership, we have to talk about, you know, the history and education and stuff like that. And one of the questions I'd always asked is like, and I don't necessarily know the answer yet, but I'd be curious. Most of the cities where bases close, the cities kind of, the economy just kind of collapse, right? And with, you know, Nellis being here, it's very significant, the amount of traffic that it brings, you know what I mean? Whether it's a retiree population, the Air Force, how much the military community actually supports the Las Vegas community and the partnerships, great partnerships, you know what I mean? And those are the most success stories when you have those large communities that support one another.
Yeah, like when 1 October, like a lot of the people, a lot of the doctors came down from Nellis to assist. A lot of the Air Force was there to support the community. I mean, you know, it's a big base, but you know, everyone, you know, I've always met from the Air Force has been just remarkable individuals. Just meeting them.
Yeah, outstanding leaders. Like I couldn't even attempt to argue it or have a leg to stand on. You know what I mean? Obviously it's been my life. I joined when I was 17, right? And here I am at 45, and it's the world I know, right? And so that's how it's interesting for 28 years from 17 to now, when I got that opportunity to be in leadership Las Vegas, the contrast that you get, because, you know, you're like, okay, I'm a leader, but how do you get to test that and actually see? And so, you know, some of the things was funny. I was telling my wife was, you know, I would go to some kind of leadership event or some kind of thing, and I was like, man, I felt like this big of a leader. And she's like, that's not you. She's like, you don't ever hesitate to speak your opinion. I was like, no, I was like kind of quiet in there because I would say emotional intelligence hasn't always been my strong point growing up. I mean, I'm just, you know, like, let's go, right?
Get it done.
And I was like, I was emotionally intelligent. I didn't say nothing, you know? But I think there's a lesson to that, though. And again, it comes to coming together. Like, there's sometimes a time to just listen, you know, and we solve the problem. I didn't have to, like, bring in some 8-change step, you know, process improvement and leadership theories of why I was right, because there's leadership perspectives from the military, there's from the banking industry, there's from the real estate industry, there's from the education, from the health. And if you've never worn those shoes, you're pretty bold to speak on it, you know, and that's something, that's why we need to listen. Like, if you've never been there, don't, you know, like, just be cautious of how you approach the conversation. Like,
I love it. You can learn something from everyone. You know, I'm constantly taught lessons in my journey. You know, like I told you, in the middle of all this, I opened up a 25,000 square foot health club, right? But I officially stepped away from management of the club, still train all ownership, but my GM, 8 years military, but 10 years in running healthcare, like health gyms, right? So I backed out. I think the important thing about a leader is knowing when someone could lead the organization better than you can. Right. Not that I can't lead, right? But his experience and his background is going to push the company that much further, faster, right? So him and I, how I look at it is, you know, we have our one-on-ones daily about the club, right? And then it goes down. He, you know, leads the whole team. We just have our executive meeting and we lead the team that way. So
Right.
I can manage the business aspects, but he manages. So that's just a lot of what the chief does. You
Right.
you lead.
So I think, like it goes back to what you said, right? So if your people win, you've won,
Yeah.
right? And you don't have to be the guy in front of the cameras. And there's a lot of perspective on that, right? And and it's funny. I was driving. I was thinking about some of the best leadership moments that I've had, and I think it all boiled down to, like I said, you don't give up, and this is what I mean, right? So I use this, and people might be like, oh, that's not true or not. But I'm like, how do you quantify and validate love, right? Because you'll see like, oh, I was married for 70 years. This couple married for 70 years on Facebook, right? And I was like, you don't think they had some bad moments?
Yeah.
I was like, you know what's quantified? They didn't give up. They didn't quit on each other. And so one of the leadership moments I had, it was funny, right? So, the dynamics can be really weird because, there was one officer in my unit who turned 27 years old 3 days before I hit 27 years in service. But, that's an officer, so they outrank me. And, lawfully, if they give me an order, I follow it. But at an assignment previous to here, so I was stationed in the Seattle area before I came to Vegas, right? So I went from nonstop rain to
No rain.
just like I'm dehydrated in the air-conditioned car. And our relationship was weird because my job was to mentor and guide. And at the end, through a rough relationship, like we were very close. And she was like, we never gave up though. You know what I mean? Like you would come back and you would say, I thought about what you said and I can see that. But this is what I was trying to say, right? And you just don't quit. I mean, again, it's all about relationships, and if you don't give up and you have an open mind and you're not so proud, you'll find that when your people win, that's when you've led, right? And some folks, I'm going to tell you straight up though, in every business, in any institution, I'll tell you this, everybody's not cut out necessarily for what they're in. Like when I did a job interview, I said, your organization may not be where I'm supposed to be. And I have to be open-minded enough to know that that's not where I belong and exit on my own versus, go in there and be upset or frustrated. And I'm always being kind of like admonished or, counseled or something like that. And we have, I think that's where you have to be honest with people. Like, listen, man, like if you can't keep your hair cut and you can't, keep your standards up and stuff like that, or you're not showing up to work on time, like you're telling me you want to be in, but your actions don't say that, and it doesn't make you a bad person. Sometimes we need to be where we really belong.
It's grit. When I hear this grit
Right.
sticking through, I same philosophies again. Never give up. You can. I talk a lot about that with these guys. Giving up and course correction is two separate things. If you just say I give up, but you can course correct, that's not giving up. It's just changing direction because your vision
Right.
changed. Right. So that's, like you said, mentor, mentee, sometimes you listen and say, I can see your opinion, which is fascinating. Any books coming out and like anything that you want to do after the
Oh,
military?
man.
Because I know you have, an amazing
Stories.
journey of 17 years old to, 45, just getting out, where you've been and what you've done. I'm sure you have some amazing, stories and, some amazing, honestly, your leadership skills and who you are just as an individual. I think, it would be only precedent if you should do a book.
Yeah, I should, right? So one of my bucket list items is, besides going to Soldier Field in the wintertime, is to write a book. I have not quite put the efforts towards it yet. New baby, transitioning. I just haven't made it a priority, right? So that would be something I'm like, hey, if you want it, you're going to go do it, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, through leadership, there's a lot of people who are kind of experts at it. So if you've written a book, trust me, we're going to talk afterwards. I'm like, all right, so where should I start? You know what I mean? Do I self-publish? So I've done enough research to say, do I self-publish? Do I get a publisher, format, and stuff like that? So I've gotten that far. I did write a couple, what I felt were kind of like children's storybooks.
Yeah.
But my daughter, who loves to draw, was supposed to illustrate them, and she kind of got lost in the world of Overwatch once school shut down, and
Yeah.
she migrated to her room. No, so really, I'm gonna tell you, right? Besides projects and stuff like that, there's a calling I believe I have that I don't necessarily, I have not put a finger on exactly what it is besides service, right? So I toyed with the idea of starting a nonprofit. Based on leadership, I understand there's a lot of, there's areas where, we need more job skill training. You have the Freedom House out there that does shine a light, but how does it translate into work skills where they can actually go out and be productive? I'm getting there.
Well, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be you. You never give up. It's funny. I was thinking when you were saying that David Goggins, when he wrote his book, he got offered a bunch of money for his book. It was a small amount at first, then it was more, and then it was I think it was
Right.
like a couple million, and then he just went self published it, self promoted it. And he was a Navy SEAL, so.
Yeah, I've read. I was like, actually, it was funny because my wife was reading it, and I was laying next to her, and she was like,
Can't hurt me.
"Babe, you're not that tough." I was like, "I'm not." I'm not.
Wait.
I said my hip hurts.
Hey, that can't hurt me. Got me through my shoulder surgery, man. I loved it.
Well, I think where it came from him at an early age was the abuse from his father,
Yep.
Right.
not believing in himself, and then seeing a commercial about the SEALs and wanting to go do it. The commitment level. Even says I see him, no BS. I see him all the time on top of. He lives here. Well, I think he lives here. I always see him on St. Rose by the M running. I've seen him 4 times now. One time with the woman just running up St. Rose.
Oh wow!
So I think he stays somewhere around the Southern Highlands area.
Very nice.
Man, he's a tough guy. Man, that Can't Hurt Me book was great. I like the perspective of having like the podcast as the audio version. I've never seen anything quite like that.
But he did the red with the podcast. Yeah, it was just there's no one I have more respect for than the military. One of my friends was just on our podcast. He was Secret Service. He was number 2 on Obama's detail. He was a great interview. He lived here for a number of years, and then Santa Fe happened, the mass shooting, and he was from Texas, so his calling, took him back there.
Right.
But what the military does for this country, how you take care of us is I don't think there's we can't say thank you enough for your service, but not only you, but all the branches of the military that support our country. I mean, we are who we are because of our military. I actually tried to go to the military when I was a kid, but they it wasn't, it was when, I think you went in when Clinton was in office. So
92.
Yes.
So you were Clinton. So that's when they were kind of dismantling, I'll say, a little bit of the military. They were tearing back a little bit. So you were one of the fortunate, I would say, to get in, because I didn't get accepted in, and I would have loved to at least done 4 years. I think everyone, I think if you're going through that like CD student, just like you are, that would be the same advice I would give my own son, who's going to be 18 right now. His grades are C's, and I know he could do better. But I think 4 years of the military would whip him into the man that I know he should be. And I heard you say something. I think sometimes being a father is sometimes harder time being a father than it is leading 200 people. It's being a dad is very difficult. And I think it's because it's your own attachment
Right.
to your children. If it's a troop that you're leading or people, right? But when it's your son or your daughter, it's kind of you have an emotional attachment.
Right.
Well, I tell you, man, I'd be interested to hear, obviously, with things to come. I look forward to the book. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I'm going to put it out there that you're going to have a great book coming out one day here. But if you had to leave our listeners, Chief, with anything, with any word of advice in the time we're in now, what would you leave the listeners with?
Oh man, I would say love one another, be open-minded, and the little things matter. Because you were funny. You were talking about the guidance and stuff like that, right? And do I have time to tell this little story?
Go for it.
Please.
Yeah, right. So there was a phenomenal chief. He kind of told this story when I was at chief school. And he talks about, like if you were in a big ship, and he was talking about his story about it. He's an aircraft carrier, right? And the captain gave him an opportunity to steer the ship, right? And if you're trying to get from point A to point B, and so he's up there and it's like left rudder, 1 degree left, right rudder, like nonstop left rudder, right rudder, it's little small degrees, right? But what happens if you're off even like the smallest degree for 3,000 miles? Do you get to your destination? You don't. You're off course. And I think that we have to be okay with saying the little things do matter. You know what I mean? Because by the time it's big, sometimes it's too late and you can't recover, right? You know, and we got to be smart and we got to be open-minded and we got to care about others before ourselves first. And I think, you know, we do well with that in Las Vegas, you know, and I think it's easy to think we, you know, with, you know, whether it's media or what's portrayed on social media, I think the majority of humanity is kind and wants to do right, but that don't sell.
They care about what sells, man.
So keep it in perspective and do your part and love one another. And it starts with you and your home and how you raise your families.
Be kind.
Chief, if the listeners wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you at?
Oh, man. Probably at the nearest Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
The Cray. We're going to go on a little bit longer about this.
We're going to Goon here. I love that place on Rainbow.
Korean barbecue, they got it right. They bring you food, you cook it yourself.
I love it.
It's the jam, man. You know, it's a little different now with the COVID stuff. I went to one that was cooking for you, and now you got to cook it yourself even more. It's crazy.
Right. So, you know what? I'm not like, you know, an Instagram guy, follow or anything like that. You know what I mean? So it was probably be more like, hey, if you want to reach out to me, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of contact with you. And obviously I'm not going to put my cell phone out there. I'm now deciding on whose phone calls I'm going to answer.
Oh, okay. You're still on that road.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the youth that want to go into the military or take a route, I think, you know, because when I think of chief, I think of a, you know, and I never said ass on this thing, but you think of a hot ass, right? You think of someone who's tough and, you know, because everyone watched, you know, A Few Good Men or any of these other shows, right? The chiefs or the colonels, they're hard, right? Drill sergeants are hard, but it's quite the opposite. You actually, you lead with your heart, you lead with love, you lead with compassion, and, you know, you can see you wear your heart on your sleeve. So thank you.
Well, like my mantra, less hua, more doa. Right? Yeah. So, you know, that's another way of saying less talk and more action and get to it.
Get to it.
Well, I tell you guys, living large, we're going to come back to you live. This was awesome, man. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming to share your story. And if you guys want to know a little more, reach out to us. You can give me a call, 615-715-7245.
Yes, 702-354-1400.
I'll see you guys on the flip side.